Incarcerated love. A gay man's arrest leads to unexpected romance. I did not see the warning signs when I began to crave drugs every day, not even when the little money I had ran out. My friends got sick of borrowing me cash. I sold valuable things and did odd jobs just so I could feed my hunger. The feeling of not having a care in the world, when those thoughts that plagued me with each waking hour could be silent. Anything was better than the horror show that was my mental health. I do not say this lightly. I woke up in hell every day, and I was that guy who people crossed the street to avoid. It wasn't always like that. I used to be a good guy set to study law in college. That was years ago. Now, I had no family, no money, and no future. I was either set on ending myself or I just really loved the feeling I got when I was high. But that was a feeling I chased like a vampire. If I did not feed that hunger, the excruciating pain that followed was hell. This is what led me to pickpocket. And I got caught on my very first try. The drugs were wearing off, and I was desperate to forget. My landlord was on my case because I had not paid rent and I hadn't eaten in several days. I was very depressed and I saw no way forward other than to steal some cash and buy some cheap drugs. I was useless at pickpocketing, just like I was bad at everything I tried to do. The man I tried to steal from called the cops on me and I got arrested. I was still high and I could not take the situation seriously. I did not understand the gravity of what I had done until much later. They noticed that something was up with me and they did a drug test. I vaguely became aware that I was in deep trouble. I had to stay in jail for a few days and wait for a bail hearing. During that time, I sobered up, but my withdrawal symptoms were killing me. Not only that, I knew that drugs were illegal and the test was definitely positive. When I was found guilty, I had a high chance of going to prison. They ended up deciding that since it was a minor incident and I was a first-time offender, I was not going to prison. But it was clear that I was a drug addict. It was decided that I was going to be sent to an addiction recovery camp. That's when it hit me. I had fallen into the deepest of pits. I used to have it all. Now I didn't even have my freedom. When I got released, I was instantly sent to the camp. I was going to have to stay there until I was clean, probably for months. I did not want to go, and I struggled against them as they dragged me into the car. All I wanted was some weed so I could relax and forget the past few days, not to be deprived of my peace of mind. When I got there, I was assigned to a room and given clothes to wear. The place was big and very colorful, with motivational posters about how things get better, etc. I found that pathetic. Things had never gotten better for me. I was told that I was only going to attend sessions in a few days. But for now, I had to adjust. Later on that day, someone came to visit me. It was a man that I recognized from the car ride. I had not been paying much attention, but now I could make out that he was a good-looking and well-put-together man. "Who are you?" I asked weakly. My body felt like it was going to give in, and I could not stop shaking. "My name is Sam. I came to check up on you. How are you settling in?" he asked. "You're like, thank you," I said. "It takes a lot of time to feel better, but you will get there. I heard that your name is Darian, right?" He asked me as he came to sit at the foot of my bed. "Yes," I said. He handed me a glass of water, and I sat up to take it. I kind of needed it. My mouth felt dry. "How are you doing?" he asked. "Yes." "You already asked me," I said. "You only told me how you were feeling physically, but not emotionally," he said. "Same," I said. "How come you came to see me? Is that allowed here? Won't the people in charge have a problem with that?" I asked. "The camp is quite different. You're free to go whenever you like and even visit others, as long as you behave. I have to go now, but it was nice meeting you," he said. Then he left. I felt a bit better after speaking with Sam. I couldn't remember the last time someone spoke to me so kindly. I had managed to lose everyone important to me in the past few years. Sam visited me nearly every day and just talked to me. I thought he was just another addict like myself, even though he did seem more put together. He was not wearing the regular uniform like most of the staff were. We talked about many things together, and he helped me by bringing me some books to read when I was bored. I was weak in the first few days, so food had to be brought to me. I could barely eat, but Sam forced me to eat. I looked forward to his visits in the few days that I was confined to the room. The day before I was to join the rest of the group, he asked me about my story. "Are you sure you want to hear my sob story? There's so much more we could talk about," I said. "Talking helps, and I won't judge you," he said. I found myself opening up to him. He was the first person in a long time who was treating me like a person, and I was starting to trust him. I hoped that I would be able to be just as well put together as he was soon. My parents kicked me out of my birthday because I told them I was gay. I'd been so scared to come out, but I was confident that they would accept me. I started, "Sometimes the people we love disappoint us," I said. "I'm so sorry," he said. "Many years were stolen from me because of those drugs. I had nothing after my parents turned their backs on me. I was a failure." I could not help the shakiness in my voice. You're not a failure because of your sexuality or anything else, he said. I'm so sorry, he said. His words were the kindest words that I had heard in a long time. My common resolve, which I had been trying to maintain for days, now broke apart. I started to cry. Everything that I'd been suppressing hit me at the same time. The pain wasn't like any other, and the tears just kept on coming. He did not say anything. He just brought me in for a hug. I finally calmed down after a while, and I felt so embarrassed. I had just broken apart in front of Sam. I tried apologizing, but he shut me up. Hey, thanks for opening up. What happened to you was messed up. You will be helped here. I was also at my lowest when I came here, but look at me now, he said. I hoped that he was right because I was feeling like nothing would ever be right again. The next day, we had our first class session. I was anxious about being around other people again. We had it in a spacious room with big windows. The other guys and girls looked just how I felt. There were only 12 of us in that session. There were others that I'd seen in the hallway, though I assumed they had made more progress than us. But we waited for our instructor. We did not speak. Some of them looked even worse than I did. The blank looks in some of their eyes saddened me, but I could not focus on someone else's plight when I had my own. Suddenly, Sam entered the room, but he was dressed in a more formal manner than the last time I saw him. I was about to go up to him and greet him when he went to the front of the room and started speaking. He introduced himself and said that he was our instructor. He explained the rules and how the program was going to work, and then we all had to introduce ourselves. After that, he told us that he had a story to tell us. He proceeded to tell us a story that was just like my own, but with a few changed details. He said that a gay guy ran away from home after telling his parents that he was gay. They did not accept him and disowned him. After that, he turned to crime and started doing drugs. After getting arrested many times and spending months at a time in jail, he ended up in rehab. But he had to go multiple times because he kept relapsing. Now, you're all here for different reasons, but one thing you have in common is that you became addicts because of your problems, he said. This guy chose to deal with his problems by running away from them. When his parents kicked him out, he should have reached out to social services and gotten placed in a home because he was underage. If that didn't work, then he should have not gotten into crime with odd jobs. He should have saved and eventually would have been financially stable. Instead, he chose to run away from his problems and use drugs as the answer. Drugs are not the answer to any problem. They become the problem and enslave you, he finished. I could not believe that he had betrayed me like that. He had taken my story and altered it and ridiculed me for my choices. He thought that it was so easy to make the right choices that he had suggested. I was now looking like some over-emotional person who could not handle his problems. I did not care that the other people would not judge me since they were also addicts. But I did not tell him my story just so he could make an example of me, yet pretended to be my friend and then betrayed me just to make himself look like he was knowledgeable in front of the other addicts. I decided that I did not trust him anymore. In fact, I despised him. That was sensitive and private information that he had just shared. I did not have the energy for confrontation, but I was very cold towards him from then on. I asked him not to visit me after the session. He acted surprised, but he said he understood my decision. In his classes, I barely participated, no matter how much he tried to get me to. It annoyed me how positive he was. He was always offering encouragement to me and helping me out. In the next weeks, physical fitness was added to our program. Very few of us were physically fit, and I found that I had sore ribs after just a single lap. Hey Darian, just a tip. I know you think that it will help you get some more air, but it does the opposite. Sam said as he came to rest beside me. He was barely sweating. It annoyed me how everything was so effortless for him. Got it, sir. I grated my teeth. Water? He said as he handed me a bottle of water. I looked at it skeptically, but I took it because I needed the water. I felt as if I was too early for physical fitness. I was still being attacked with cravings all the time, and it was getting worse with each passing day. It was all I could think about. Every day, I was now forced to deal with the voices in my head alone, and I was struggling to cope. Hey, I know that it's difficult. This is the hardest part. If you feel like you can't handle it anymore, please talk to me, he suddenly said. It was like he read my thoughts. Sometimes I had to remind myself that he had been trained for this job and that he did not understand how I was feeling. He was getting paid to fix me. He did not care. No one had ever cared. I walked away from him and made my way to Kieran, one of the few friends that I had. Kieran and I had become close in the past few weeks. He had gotten addicted to pain medication after he got into an accident. His parents sent him to the camp after he started selling their things to buy drugs. He's so annoying, I said as I joined Kieran. It's not so bad. His methods worked, he shrugged. Easy for you to say. He did not take your story and tell everyone during the first session. I scoffed. I'm sure he meant well. Maybe you should tell him that you did not like what he did, he suggested. I have nothing to say to him. I have a question, I said. Shoot. How bad are your cravings? I asked. Not so bad now. I'm recovering, I guess, he said. I smiled and nodded, but I did not tell him what was really bothering me. I wanted something so badly. Even a small pill would do. Every night, I felt like running away and getting something just to calm me, but I managed to stop myself most times. However, I was afraid that one day I would be unable to fight the urge. As the days passed, it got worse. I could do nothing but think of it. Not even food could help me to get over the hunger. Then one day Sam came to me with some news. My parents heard that I was here at the camp and they wanted to visit me. I told him I wanted nothing to do with them, and I told him to leave me alone. That ruined the rest of the day. I felt as if the little progress I had made had just come undone. The hurtful words they said to me on that day came back. It was so loud in my head and I wanted it to stop. I craved something to make me feel good and forget. The news pushed me over the edge and I decided that I was done, and I wanted to run away or at least sneak out for a few hours and get a fix. No matter what I did, my darkness would always follow me. I could not escape where I used to be no matter how hard I tried. That night, I waited until midnight before I sneaked out. The security there was tight, but I was desperate. It was late in the night and I took a chance. I guessed that the security at night was not so tight and I had a chance of escaping. I made it a pest of the front desk by dodging the security guards. Most of them had dozed off anyways. I just had to make it out of the gate and I was home free. Once I made it outside, I started to climb the fence. Luckily for me, it was not an electric fence. I had not even made it halfway when suddenly someone pulled me down. I fell to the ground painfully. It was dark, and I could not see the person who had pulled me down, but I assumed that it was one of the security guards. I could not believe that I was so close to escaping. He pulled me up and I winced from the pain. I was angry but also scared. My heart was beating very fast as well. I told you that you could come talk to me when things became difficult. I'm relieved that I caught you before you got too far, a familiar voice said. Sam? I asked. Yeah, it's me. Now come with me before anyone else sees you, he said. I started walking with him back to the building, but we bumped into a security guard. Why is he out here? Did he try to escape? We'll have to inform the court, the security guard said. He was right. One of the conditions of my release was that I was not allowed to leave before I got the go-ahead from the center, and I was going to get sent to jail. Gosh, why did nothing ever work out for me? I asked Sam when the security guard had finally left. It was just the two of us at reception now. I had been so certain that he was going to turn me in. He might have been kind, but he was a no-nonsense person, and I had been cold towards him ever since the first session. He owed me no loyalty. Come with me, he simply said, as he started to walk back out. I was puzzled as to why we were going on out again. After I followed closely behind him, he stopped at the back of the building. There was a ladder leading up to the roof, which he had started climbing. Once he was at the top, he gestured for me to follow him. I still had so much adrenaline from the events of the past few minutes, so I was still scared. I took a chance and followed after him. He was now sitting on the roof, looking off into the distance. I had never been outside during the night, but I was kind of happy to see the stars once again. Do you come here often? I asked. I just need to clear my mind. He said. Why did you stop me? I wanted to leave. I can't do this anymore. I shouted, and I couldn't help the tears that threatened to fall. Now it's difficult right now. You have to stay sober, he said. Just a minute. I'm pathetic, I said, choking back tears. I had failed at everything. That's not your story, he told me. I was in a worse situation than you a few years ago, fresh out of jail after a failed burglary. It was my third time in rehab, and I couldn't wait to get out again. I could try the newest drugs. He smiled bitterly. He had a faraway, haunted look that I'd never seen before in his eyes. You ended up doing drugs? I asked. I ran away from home because my parents didn't accept that I was gay, he said. They didn't kick me out, but it felt like they did after the way they treated me. I fell in with the wrong crowd, and the next thing I knew, I was an addict committing petty crimes. How come you've never told me this before? I was shocked looking at him. How had he never done drugs before, let alone committed a crime? You were telling my story. I said, that's why you were angry with me, right? He asked. I nodded and looked down shamefully. I felt bad. He had been so kind and helpful towards everyone. But I had let the warped idea I had of him ruin things between us. I'm so sorry, I said. It's okay. I suspected that your cravings were getting worse in the past few days. And with the news of your parents, I felt it would push you over the edge, he said. I don't want to see them again, nor do I feel like I can stay here anymore. Maybe jail wouldn't be so bad. I could easily get my fix there, I said bitterly. I used to have so much anger towards them, but after a while I stopped caring. I craved the days when I could forget about them for a few hours. He let me. I can visit you more. We can talk. I have a few methods that help ease the cravings, he offered. I don't know, I said. He squeezed my hand slightly. I've been there. I can help. Stay a bit longer. It does get better, he said. Okay, for a little bit longer, I said. Due to the way things had improved between us, I was now more open to his sessions. It was hard sometimes, and my body felt like it could give in so many times, but he was always there for me and the others. They always had words of encouragement and tips for us, and over time, my body started to recover. When we had our private chats, we grew close. It had been so long since I had someone I could open up to. He and Karen were the first people who showed real care for me in a long time. Sometimes I would forget that he was my counselor instructor. It was so open and real. Our conversations became more casual. We started talking about ourselves and things that we liked, our hobbies, etc. I couldn't deny that I looked forward to seeing him every day because he made me feel at home. I liked the feeling of warmth that I got whenever I was around him. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but I started to develop a little crush on him. Who could blame me, though? It was wonderful, but I knew my boundaries. He was my counselor and was supposed to be treating me. He probably didn't see me in that way. Or he was way out of my league. Kyrian, who had now become like my best friend, ended up discharged earlier than me because he had passed his evaluation. For me, I still had a few weeks in there before I was deemed fit enough to leave. Before he left, he confronted me about my little crush on Sam. "Hey, promise me something before I go," he said. "Anything," I said as I helped him pack his stuff. It was cool that we weren't confined to our rooms the whole day, and they weren't fussy about visitors, he said. "First, we keep in contact, and second of all, you shouldn't let the chance of something beautiful with Sam pass," he said. "Nothing is going on between me and Sam," I protested, but I knew I was lying. The chemistry between us was too much for me to deny, but that would be breaking the rules. And I was pretty sure that he would lose his job if he ever became involved with me while I was at the center. I can't become involved with him in any way, at least not when I'm in here. I sighed. "Aw, you lovesick puppy. Ask him out when you leave. You're insufferable," he said. "Aw, fine." I rolled my eyes. Sometimes my friend was such a bully. I wanted to wipe the satisfied look on his face. One day after a fitness session, I stayed behind to talk to Sam. I couldn't control the draw I had to him. I found every possible excuse to spend time with him. And now that Kyrian was out, I didn't have anyone else to talk to. Most of the others had left already, and I was now mixed with another group that I hadn't quite connected with. "So what are your plans after this?" he asked. "Fix things with my friends and look for a job and, of course, stay away from drugs." I said, "What about your parents?" "They keep on calling you," he said. "Sometimes I think of talking to them, but I find that I can't," I replied. "You'll find the courage one day." He squeezed my hand. Being around him was so difficult for me in the last days. I didn't know if we would want to keep in touch. I dreaded the day that I would have to say goodbye, for I hadn't gotten the courage to ask him out for the past few weeks. I had just enjoyed every little moment that we had. Not only that, I had a ton of baggage. I wasn't sure if I was ready to pursue anything with someone. "Let me walk you to your room," Sam said after dinner. I agreed, and he walked in silence to my room. I didn't have a lot of things, just pamphlets I received and some clothes, so I had already packed all my stuff. He looked at my bag in the corner when we entered. "We're like glared," I said. Thanks, I'm assuming that you have a lot to do tonight with the new arrivals and all," I smiled. In all honesty, I didn't want him to go. I wanted to spend just a little longer with him. "You want me to leave so you can get some rest?" he started. "No, I don't mean that I want you to leave. I just thought you had better things to do. And this morning some new people arrived," I explained. "George has taken control of that," he said. "I just wanted to check in on you. We'll be leaving soon, and facing the world sober is not so easy. Yes, I'm a bit frightened. Can I ask you something?" I said, "Of course," he said, smiling. "Did you ever talk to your parents again?" I asked. "Only my father. About a year ago. My mother passed away before I got a chance to speak to her. Besides, how did it go? If you don't mind me prying," he added. He blamed himself for what happened to me. He told me that he spent a long time trying to forgive himself. He and Mom couldn't forgive me for leaving for a long time, but I guess after a while, they started to see things differently. I said, "Do you think my parents regret their decision to kick me out?" I asked. "I won't give you false hope, but maybe you should hear what they have to say," he suggested. I was silent for a while as I took in all that he had said to me. Maybe one day I would find the courage to speak to them when I didn't feel so raw anymore. "Thank you, Sam, ever since I came to this place. You've made me feel welcome. You saw me at my worst, and you didn't judge me," I said. "I could never judge you. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Right, we as people have our flaws. Some plague us to the point of seeking an escape. I learned that during my long journey to recovery, our flaws are part of us, but they're not us, he said. "Are you a poet? You have a way with words." I smiled. "I don't always know what to say," he admitted. I found it hard to believe. He always seemed so confident in his words. He always had the right words. "I'm having trouble believing you. There's so little you know, like, I already miss you even though you're not gone yet," I confessed. I didn't expect my heart to spike up like that, but the words that he had just uttered. "You have many friends. You'll survive without me," I replied. "There's no one like you," he continued. He was now looking at me with an unreadable expression on his face. I suddenly felt really hot, so I made my way to my window. "Now, I'm your counselor. I've been trying to keep these feelings inside for weeks, but what I've learned in the past is that I should say how I feel when I still have the chance," he continued. "I wanted to tell you how I felt, but I didn't think you would feel the same way. I mean, I have nothing to offer you," I replied. "Don't look down on yourself. So many special moments passed between us, but I tried to hold back. I told myself I would tell you soon, and the next thing I knew, you were leaving." He sounded so sad that I wanted to hug him. So I went up to him and hugged him for the first time. I felt so warm and safe in his embrace. The stress that I had been under just evaporated into nothingness. We pulled away from each other after a while. "Sam, will you go on a date with me?" I suddenly found myself saying. I waited with bated breath for his answer. "Yes, of course I will, Darion," he grinned. I smiled and gave him a peck on the cheek. I desperately wanted to kiss him, but I didn't want to rush things with him. In the past, I had acted on impulse without knowing someone truly. I wanted to get to know him outside of this place so that when we had our first kiss, it would be special. "I have to go now. Good night, but thank you for asking me out," he said. "Good night," I said as he left. I had a hard time falling asleep that night. I was just too excited to sleep. I tossed and turned until late at night. I wanted to be discharged already so that I would be able to finally go on a date with him. And to be honest, I was tired of the food here. I daydreamed about candlelit dinners until I fell into a deep slumber. I was walking on sunshine for the next couple of days. We shared a few secret glances and touches. I was so excited for the day that I would be discharged. Kyrian and I had been keeping in touch over the weeks, and he was so excited to see me. He had sent me such a long letter when I told him about me asking Sam out on a date. Then the day came when I had to leave. Sam worked late for 2 or 3 nights a week, so we would only have our date later that week. I was so sad to say goodbye to him, but very excited to see him soon. Kyrian had offered to let me stay at his place for as long as it took me to get back on my feet. I couldn't explain how happy I was to see my best friend when I had gotten out. I'd managed to get through the hard part, which was recovery, but now the hardest task of being back in society was coming.